And welcome to this edition of Central Valley Business. I'm your host, Lauren Baker, and we are here with the Tulare County Supervisor District 1 candidate, Vincent B. Salinas. Welcome, Vincent.
Well, thank you. Let me give you a little introduction about myself.
Absolutely.
I was born and raised in Visalia, also educated in Visalia and Porterville. I have 4 children, 2 sons, 2 daughters, and 4 grandchildren. I have over 28 years of professional experience in financing, mortgage, business development, and also in the area of land use planning. Presently, I'm with the Fresno State Small Business Development Center, and I'm a business consultant. And what I basically do is provide business counseling to people who want to start up their business or expand their business, since we're part of SBA. So one of the reasons why I wanted to come on the show is talk about economic development in Tulare County. And Tulare County, we have 8 cities and about 21 different communities. And in District 1, there's 4 cities in my district. That'd be Visalia, Exeter, Lindsay, and Farmersville. And so out of those 4, only one has an economic development person on staff. The other 3 don't. And none of the communities in the surrounding areas have an economic development person. They're dependent on Tulare County for economic development. Tulare County was part of what we call Tulare County Economic Development Corporation, and they pulled out in about 2012, where they pulled out from being a participant and paying their dues into the corporation, and so they began to staff their own economic development department. They have about 3 staff persons working for economic development. And what I see here is that if we can begin to develop a better relationship between the cities and the counties by providing some incentives, tax incentives, to help the infill of the community. What I mean by infill is, as the city grows, you're growing outwards, and sometimes inside the central part of the community, the cities, there's vacant land, vacant buildings. So what I'm going to be suggesting is that if we can work with the cities, Visalia, Exeter, Farmersville, and Lindsay, and provide some tax incentive for infill in the commercial retail sections of their town. And if you drive through each of these towns, you could see a lot of, in the older part of the business district, a lot of vacant property and a lot of vacant land. So by creating some tax incentive to get businesses to come in, they provide job opportunities to a lot of communities. And the city and the county would generate property tax, because when you have a vacant land, it doesn't generate any taxes. By having a building there, it begins to generate taxes. The county receives 30% of the property tax for the county. The cities only collect about 11%, and the school districts typically gain all the other part of the property tax, somewhere about the neighborhood of 48%. So with my idea coming in is we can provide some tax opportunities for businesses to come in, create some revenues for the city, create some jobs for the community, which would basically help us eliminate our 13% unemployment rate.
That's awesome.
So that's where I'm focusing on when I get elected to the Board of Supervisors. I had a long opportunity to talk with the Economic Development Manager and the CAO of the county, and they both agree with those are the kind of things that we need to do to create business in the community and also creating opportunities. The county's done a good job of its economic development. Since they broke away in 2012 from the Tulare County Department of Economic Development Corporation, they have over $700 million of excess value within Tulare County. And since they issued the business permits for the city of Exeter and Farmersville, each of those cities has generated $20 million in excess value. So the county is doing a good job of working within the county and also working within the cities. One of the things that the county and the city of Visalia worked out is a tax incentive to bring Nordstrom's warehousing into Visalia. And so they both gave up a lot of tax revenues to get them there, because they're going to generate about 18,000 new jobs, and which will create a good vacuum for the city of Visalia, because typically when a company comes in, usually the people who apply for the jobs are local first. About 30% would be from Visalia. about 30% would be from the county, and about 30% from the surrounding communities like Fresno, Kings, Bakersfield. So there's a progression there of moving jobs in and creating a vacuum in the other areas because people move in. So that's how you create about 18,000 new jobs, which is a great boom to Visalia, a great boom to the county, because once their tax incentives are gone, then the county begins to generate its, say, 30% of its revenues, and the city begins to generate 11% of the revenues. But the biggest factor here is again, is sales tax and all the other ratios that come out from people being employed and spending money locally, spending money within the county.
Absolutely.
So that's one of my goals, is to provide that service to my entire district and to the entire county, so we can create those atmospheres in the community. One of the things that the county and cities have is what they call a MOU, which is a memo of understanding as to how they're going to work with each other. The cities have their city limits, and they also have their urban boundaries, meaning that it's not annexed into the city, but it's still under the county's jurisdiction. And so, but in the future, the city plans to annex those properties into the city. And so sometimes the conflict is that the county approves a commercial development, residential development within those urban boundaries, which means it creates a conflict with the cities because, the development may not meet the standards of the cities. So they need to work these issues out between each other. And so that's what this memo of understanding is going to do, is to make sure that whatever the county approves will match the system that's going in with the cities. The biggest problem with commercial development, residential development outside of the cities is that there's an impact within the county, because the county can't afford the infrastructure. They can't afford the streets, the curbs, the gutters, the draining, the solid waste system, and the water system. So any commercial development, residential development has to basically do it themselves.
Yes.
And it becomes more and more difficult because some of the, say, wastewater treatment facilities become into the millions. So it doesn't seem economic feasible for them to do it. I'm going to give you an example. In Farmersville, just out of the city limits of Farmersville, the county approved a commercial development, while the city of Farmersville has a location right the next exit into the community, a commercial piece of property that the county should have probably worked and tried to get that development to go there, because then all the infrastructure would be there within the city. And that's how the county can basically benefit from that commercial development, by generating additional tax revenues to help us with the other services that need to provide in the communities, such as the communities of Strathmore, Woodville, Plainview, Tonyville, Linnell, Camp. Those communities don't have the maximum services as you do in a city. And so they're dependent on whatever the county can provide. And the county is doing a good job of trying to get commercial development, particularly with markets and pharmacy within those communities. There's more and more of the dollar stores popping up in these little communities like Strathmore, Early Mart. Pretty soon there'll be one in Traver. So the county is trying its best to develop a good, sound economic development within the county to generate the revenues to be able to provide these other services to the communities that don't have those services.
Absolutely. I wanted to ask you, what motivates you to be so involved to the point of wanting to be in the district council? What makes you because I know you have there are a lot of things that you're concerned about that you want to see change, like the economic tone and the way that it works. But what motivated you to start being involved like this?
Well, my involvement has been since I was in high school. I participated in city government, county government. I was participating in community organizations. I have a whole list of my experience. My age would tell you that I've been involved almost for the last 40 years with organizations, everything from the Rotary Club, the Kiwanis Club. I'm a lifetime member of the Junior Chamber of Commerce. With my background, particularly with Chambers of Commerce, I've been a member of Chambers of Commerce for over 25 years. And that's where I get my background of working with businesses. I have over 19 years in public service, meaning that I worked on general plans, I've been on the Visalia Planning Commission. I'm a former elected official to the city of Newark in the Bay Area. So that gives me the opportunity with my skills and background to get into the race and be elected and basically start with my feet on the ground and move in the right direction without having to go through a process of saying I need to catch up. Yeah. Especially when it comes to budgets. You know, when I was on the Newark City Council, we had a budget. We had to approve budgets for the police department, fire department, some administrative staff. So I'm already familiar with that. Especially with my background, I have over 25 years in the banking profession. And so with that, my background in financing is pretty strong. So I read the county's budget for last year and this year, and it just seems normal with going through that process.
That's awesome. And I know that we're focusing more on like the economic aspect of like things that you want to address, but I'm curious as to where you stand on youth involvement as far as like getting involved with their community goes, because I know like Fresno has a new youth advisory council at City Hall, and I wonder what your stance is as far as like younger people getting involved with things that concern their community.
Well, you know, back in 2003, 2004, when I was with the Hispanic Roundtable, we created with the former judge Salcido, when he was mayor of Lindsay, we started creating a gathering on how do we prevent gang violence. And so what we do is start bringing professional people into the meetings, have a forum to discuss how do we resolve these issues, these problems. And that's where basically the Step Up program for the county started, where they provide services to the youth, activities, and then they also have other community organizations providing like Pro Youth, providing activities after school. We have the Loop, which provides bus service within the county to bring the kids into the communities where there's activities for them to deal with. So those are the things that I'll continue to support and work with, and hope to have, and most of the communities, some type of boys and girls club, and getting the youth into an advisory position, so we can make sure that those things happen. The same situation with senior citizens, same situation with veterans. We need more of those kind of facilities to provide those kind of services too.
Absolutely, and that's good to hear. Other than like the economic aspect, what are issues that you feel are the most pressing that need to be addressed within all of our communities?
Well, the biggest concern right now in the San Joaquin Valley is water.
Yes.
Okay? So I mean, the California Water Resources Board created a new regulation stating, I want to make it in a simple term, it's telling us we're going to have to regulate how much water we take out of the ground and how much water we put back in the ground. That's about as simple as I can make the statement, what we have to regulate. And there's oppositions, not everybody feel comfortable with it, but we have to have these regulations in place by next year, January of next year. Those regulations have to be in place. So it's basically trying to work to how do we provide the surface storage water within the San Joaquin Valley. And 2006, we started from the last drought working with how do we fix surface storage water facilities. And at that time, we were still talking about temperance flat. So we created the Latino Water Coalition, which we began getting the farm workers and the farmers together, say this is an issue for the farmers, it's an issue for the valley, that we need to work together to bring change into the community. And that's when we brought Governor Arnold Schwarzenegger to St. Louis Reservoir. We had a march from Delano to St. Louis Reservoir. We had 7,000 farmers and farm workers to bring it to the attention of the state and the nation that we need water in the San Joaquin Valley.
Yes.
So that year in 2010, we had a bond measure on the ballot, or going to be on the ballot, but when Governor Brown came in, he postponed it because then we were in the Great Recession, so we had no money. And it was set aside for about $11 billion. And 2014, they changed it to about $8 billion, and we got that approved. Now Tulare County is working with the other counties in the area to create where they already created a joint power agreement, and trying to secure about $3 billion to build temperance flat above Bryant Dam to provide us an additional storage water. at that time, the water would basically help us provide groundwater recharge to the community. Tulare County is dependent on 50% of its water from Frat down. And one of the cities in my district depends on 90% of that water for that community. They're only going to receive an allotment of 40%. So now they have to go to groundwater to pump water to meet that other 60% of the water needed for the city.
Yeah.
So those are the things that we need to work, not just with temperate flat, but other types of storage facilities. Visalia is working on water basins and creating some recharge. They had just over $100 million redesign of their solid wastewater treatment facility that puts water back upstream, which we call gray water because it's pretty clean, or purple water that they could use for their own yards and golf course and parks within the community. And it's a trade-off between the Korea Water Conservation District and the city of Visalia to provide, when water comes downstream, to put it into their basins so they can recharge, and then they provide the water from that point heading basically west into the other areas. So there's a lot of things that we can do, a lot of things that we can work on to provide surface storage water facilities.
Absolutely, and that is true. That's probably the most pressing of any issue we could talk about, at least in California, because Fresno, the Central Valley, we are the breadbasket of the world. Like, if we don't have water, like, it's like almost the same as everyone else not having waters, essentially.
Well, think about it. Ag business, Fresno, Tulare Kings, and Kern County, we're about pretty close to what? $25 billion in ag business? $25 billion in ag business.
Yeah, seriously, if we don't have water, the rest of you out there in this United States don't eat, kind of. At least you don't get the good stuff. Like, if you've ever been to another state and try to find, like, a good tomato or lemon, you're not gonna find it like you will in Fresno or anywhere near here, because it's from here. Like, we grow everything that's out there.
And, like to brag, that Tulare County does Fresno and Kern County for the last 2-3 years. We outproduce them. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So we have a great ag community.
Absolutely. We're the best, like, bar none. So we need the water. But going back to issues of, like, economics, and I know we talked a lot about it, but because I know that, do you agree that, like, maybe we're in a better place than we were 8 years ago? Because I know there's been a lot of dialogue about how, like, Obama did nothing, which I don't entirely agree with, but how do you feel as far as, like, the overall, like, not just our own counties, but, like, do you think we are in a better place, and, like, if we're not, like, what can we all do, perhaps?
Well, the economy is turning around. Unemployment nationally is at 4%, if I remember. So the economy is turning around. The economy is growing. It's more now trying to create those pockets that the communities are not benefiting from that development. When I mentioned Tulare County, we have a high unemployment rate of 13%. We also have a poverty rate of 25%. Imagine that. Tulare County is about 440,000 people. I think 1/4, 110,000 people are below the poverty level. Those are the kind of issues that we need to look at by providing economic development, is how we move those people from poverty into employment, matching our unemployment rate to be with the national trend of 4% instead of 13%. So those are the things that I'm looking at to say, how do we cure those problems and solutions and provide solutions to those problems in the community? Do
you have ideas yet as far as, like, what can be done to, like, eliminate some of the homeless population? Not like in a dead way, that sounds kind of bad, but, like, have you thought of any potential solutions of what we can do to get them to not have to be homeless?
Well, that's a big problem.
Yeah.
I for the last 3 years have worked with Project Homeless Connect. It's a federal sponsored program where they provide service annually, provide almost like 25 different agencies that come in and help the homeless with medical services, dental services, birth certificates, driver's license, housing, meals, clothing. It's just a tremendous one whole day of providing those services. Usually we have about 300 to 400 homeless people come to this event.
Wow.
And we provide that annually for, well, I have volunteered in the last 3 years, but it's been around for almost 10 now. And so what the government is trying to do is identify the homeless population, identify what their needs are, identify why they're homeless. And that's what they also do at that time, is to kind of get a feedback and a survey of why they're homeless. And would you believe that only maybe 2 or 3% of the homeless people, in a sense, want to be homeless? They don't want to be bothered with anything. And you have another high percentage, somewhere about, I'm trying to remember my numbers, about 15-20% of them have mental issues. So those are a big segment, that it's the mental issues that we need to deal with. And we're trying to, the state, the county's trying to work with the state not to close down one of the mental hospitals in Tulare County, which is located in Porterville. That's a facility that needs to be utilized. We're saying, if you notice that we have a homeless population, and that about 20% of the homeless have mental health issues, why are you closing down a facility when it's there? They provide monies to homeless mental health services. The Tulare County Department of Health Services provides mental health services. They have funds that they give out to other agencies to provide mental health services. So the money is there, so why shut down a facility when you can basically help the homeless population that have mental health problems? A lot of them is employment, a lot of them is housing. So working within the cities and the communities to create additional housing for the homeless, additional employment for the homeless. That's how we could begin to deal with that issue. In the same sense, we can deal with the poverty rate in the community, as to provide economic development to the community.
Absolutely, and I'm glad that there's something like that out there, be it Tulare or anywhere neighboring by us, that is willing to look into the why, because I think so many of us do not. Like, a lot of people like to assume that they're like homeless by choice or something like that, and it's almost rarely the case as far as I've ever heard.
Correct. It's not the case. It's just that there's no services being provided to them, like I mentioned.
Exactly, and everyone can use the help, because we don't know the circumstance in which someone ends up like that. Like, people like to assume, again, like it's because they either want to be or they weren't willing to work. But sometimes it's it's a veteran who did put in the time, who had paid their dues, that had a whole life, but things just went south. And it's not fair that people like that shouldn't have any type of service to help them out when they've done so much for us as well. Before we go, is there anything else we should know about you, perhaps as a candidate, or that you want your Tulare residents to know as far as why they should perhaps advocate for you?
As I stated with my qualifications, I have over 19 years with government service. As a Planning Commission for 11 years, on the General Plan Update Committee for 4 years. I was in the New York City Council, and prior to that, I served on the New York City Council's General Plan Update. So that puts me in line to understand land use issues. Notice we were talking about economic development. All has to do with land use issues.
Yeah.
I have over 25 years being on the board and member of the Chambers of Commerce to understand the need of businesses. One of the things that businesses don't need is more and more regulations. And yes, they don't need more and more fees and taxes to them. And we have to work and help them. And that's why I've been an advocate for business through being a member of the Chamber of Commerce where I've lived. And so those things help the community understand the problems and concerns that we have.
Absolutely. And if perhaps there are people watching that maybe want to be involved with you, is there a way that you can be reached,
Yes, I have a webpage at www.vincentbsalinas.com, and it has contact, email, and my direct phone number is 559-905-4469.
Awesome. Thank you so much for being here today and sharing all of this with us. Everything you said is so important. It's worth thinking about. And if you're watching in Tulare, we'll hope you'll learn more. Take the initiative to learn more about our candidate here, Vincent. And stay right here on Central Valley Business. We'll be right back after these messages.
Thank you.
You're very much.